Good afternoon. How are you? Well, it's nice out. It's 67 degrees. It's almost an ideal temperature, just not quite 75 and not 55. The humidity, according to Thomas Jefferson, is 55, and the wind is 9 miles an hour, and there is a wind. So I apologize if the sound is a little difficult because of the wind. We're in a period where we're trying to read the tea leaves, what information we have to tell us what's going on. And the problem with that is that we really can't know very much. The polling is late and close, and I don't know how reliable. And if you look at the sample size of some of these polls, there can be as low as 600 for a national poll on what's going on. So, yes, and I know all the ways that we do this to make it a useful inferential tool, but it's not that reliable, frankly. So that's the problem. So we have to judge how it's going by how the candidates are doing. Kamala conducts herself like a professional, but also a person who believes in public service and has the resume to prove that she has been in public service. Trump, by comparison, is the bully in the room, the guy who uses force and pressure to get his way and is always making some sort of calculation and some sort of transaction, because that's what he does, is transactions. So Harris goes after the Latino voters, and particularly those from Puerto Rico, and especially after the not very funny joke that was told at the Madison Square Garden rally, I think Hitler, that Trump had. Now, I received information yesterday that the skit or jokes that were told were reviewed beforehand, and there had been one that used an unfortunate word to describe Kamala that was excluded in that review, which means that when the campaign reviewed the comics' jokes, they had an opportunity to take out those offensive remarks about Puerto Ricans. This tells us a lot about the campaign, and it tells us how desperate they must feel, and that they believe that this kind of atrocious remark works. Now, we do know in a setting that comics make certain statements that are funny if it's not about you or your group, if you will. This was not that kind of an appearance, nor could the content be said to be good that way. And in fact, it appears on its face to be bad politics, because in a battleground state, Pennsylvania, this slur on Puerto Ricans who can vote in this country by talking about those on the island who can't vote in this country should redound to the detriment of Trump's campaign, and I'd expect so. Another visible item that has us scratching our heads a little bit is how the Business Council, the people have money in their pocket, so they're not poor, but they're concerned about the revenge of Trump. And so what are they going to do? When you have a candidate for office who's saying, who's my buddy, who's my enemy, and it matters, it affects those businessmen in a way other than Trump does, which is he wants to choose winners and losers, and he does that based on how they supported him or not. So just one example of Trump affecting individuals and business are these two examples of the Puerto Ricans, of course, and of members of the Business Council. Now, I had a friend who was a supporter when I ran for office, and over the years we've remained in touch. And his remark was always, Big is good, but small is better, referring to businesses. And he had several small businesses that gave him a good life, and he was very smart. And as far as I could tell, what he did was productive for the community. So the businessman and the business council, who sees how his business can be compromised or crushed, is in a way a victim of the bullying of a candidate like Trump, who has like a brown shirt mentality for how one runs for office and what is suitable conduct, which we would think is not. Now on that score, we have the Philly DA doing what the Attorney General should be doing, and he's suing to stop Musk's $1 million giveaway program. And that's Larry Krasner, and you may have heard of his name before. And he's charging that what is going on is an unlawful lottery and an unfair trade practice. And he's going to seek an injunction if he hasn't already. And it's against the American PAC and against Musk. And he says it must be stopped, and I couldn't agree more. And they're even charging more, that is, they're paying out more, $100 for personal data about people, to gather it in the connection with an ongoing election using a lottery. Now, this is not the only place this is going on. It's going on in Georgia, Nevada, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, and North Carolina, I believe. And the consumer law in Pennsylvania makes this wrong, and one Republican has asked that the Attorney General, isn't this interesting? A Republican is asking the Attorney General to step up and to stop this. But is there any indication that's going to happen? No. And the vulgarity of Trump that you would think normally a person would recoil from doesn't seem to be effective, especially among the supporters of Trump. So Trump's minions are circulating vulgar t-shirts disparaging Harris, extending the kind of misconduct. And Trump, if you've heard him since, is talking about, oh, it was a lovely affair. People loving each other. It was wonderful. This sounds like, the mad scientist in the horror movie having just inflamed the entire audience, metaphorically speaking, and then comes out and says, wasn't it beautiful? They loved each other. So what can we expect to see? Well, today, if this gets up early enough, you should see what Kamala Harris says in one of her final closing speeches, and she's going to do it at the Ellipse, where Trump spoke on January the 6th. And what we're going to see is the parallel between Trump's enemies list and Kamala's Friends of Democracy presentation. What I expect we're going to hear and see is her addressing, who do you want in the Oval Office? The person that tried to overthrow our government to get there now lies about it and asks you to give him your trust with those kind of data points, as opposed to Kamala Harris and Tim Walz, who have proven by their lifetime service and their conduct in this campaign to be the superior choices to govern our nation in a way that people aren't going to daily be stressed, anxious, what a guy like Trump is doing in the office, particularly when one of his primary motivations is to get reelected, to find some way to pardon himself and to get even with those who disagree with him, and to impose legislation and policies based on discrimination, not just in his border policies, But in America, a man who doesn't support Obamacare, a man who doesn't support equal justice before law, a man who would destroy our republic and the democracy upon which it is built. So those are a couple of my observations. I'll be very curious to see how Kamala handles the argument, but she has not disappointed so far, so I don't expect her disappointed here. And that's kind of what I got on my mind today. So I say good afternoon to you from the Cathedral of Trees, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow. All the best. Bye-bye.